There are three fish that millions of adults over 60 eat regularly. Fish they choose specifically because they believe they are making a healthy, heart-conscious, physician-approved decision, that are delivering measurable doses of methylmercury, industrial dioxins, and omega-6 inflammatory compounds directly into the biological systems that aging has already made most vulnerable. Not farmed fish, not obvious junk food. Fish that appear on mainstream healthy eating lists, that doctors reference in general dietary guidance, and that the seafood industry markets using heart health and brain health claims backed by real nutritional data about the category of fish, while omitting the specific contamination profile of the individual species. At the same time, 5 specific fish have documentation in peer-reviewed clinical research for the exact biological effects adults over 60 need most: reducing the neuroinflammation that precedes Alzheimer's, reversing the muscle protein synthesis decline that drives sarcopenia, protecting the cardiovascular endothelium from the hypertensive damage that accumulates across decades, and supporting the gut microbiome diversity whose collapse after 60 drives inflammatory disease progression in every organ simultaneously. By the end of this video, you will know all 8 fish by name, the mechanism behind each, and why the most contaminated fish on the avoid list is also the one most heavily marketed to health-conscious adults. In Japan, adults over 65 consume an average of 68 grams of seafood daily, approximately 3 times the American average for the same age group, according to the Ministry of Health, Labor, and Welfare's National Health and Nutrition Survey, which has tracked this data continuously since 1945. The specific fish composition of Japanese dietary patterns differs from American seafood consumption in 3 ways that directly map to health outcome differences. Of any food source at the lowest methylmercury exposure. Second, shellfish and bivalves, oysters, clams, and scallops, are consumed weekly rather than occasionally, providing zinc, selenium, and vitamin B12 at concentrations that compensate for the age-related absorption decline these nutrients undergo after 60. Third, the large predatory fish that accumulate the highest methylmercury concentrations through biomagnification, tuna, swordfish, and shark, are consumed rarely and in small portions, not as dietary staples. Advisories that covered multiple fish species with documented contamination profiles. No equivalent advisory targeting older adults as a specific population has been issued by any American regulatory agency. My name is Dr. Jae Yoon. I have practiced medicine for 26 years, trained in Western clinical medicine and traditional East Asian integrative medicine, and I have spent a significant portion of that career managing the intersection of seafood consumption and the 4 biological systems whose decline most determines the quality of life after 60: neurological integrity, cardiovascular function, skeletal muscle mass, and systemic inflammatory load. In my practice, I have seen patients who ate tuna 4 times per week, following the general eat more fish advice their cardiologist provided, and presented with blood mercury levels above clinical reference ranges, subtle cognitive processing changes, and rising inflammatory markers that resolved meaningfully when the tuna was replaced with sardines at equivalent frequency. The gap between eat more fish as a general recommendation and eat these 5 specific fish, avoid these 3 for these documented biological reasons, is the gap between advice that sounds right and advice that actually changes outcomes. That gap is what this video closes. Before we go through all 8, press the like button right now. I do not have a pharmaceutical company funding this channel. Without that like, YouTube buries this video and the person who needs it most never finds it. With your like, this reaches 100,000 people, and somewhere in that number is an adult over 60 eating canned tuna 5 days a week as their primary protein source, genuinely believing they are protecting their brain and heart, while accumulating methylmercury in neurological tissue that has no mechanism to rapidly clear it. Press it now. Every week I release research your doctor has not had time to cover in a standard appointment. Subscribe so you do not miss it. And I deliberately left out one preparation method that increases the omega-3 bioavailability of the 5 must-eat fish by up to 40%, a technique standard in Japanese coastal cooking that no Western nutrition guideline has ever documented. Tell me in the comments if you want me to cover it next. I read every single one. The first fish adults over 60 must eat is sardines. And the biological case for sardines as the single most complete food source for the aging body is stronger than for any other food in any category. Sardines are small, short-lived fish that feed on plankton rather than other fish. This feeding position at the base of the marine food chain means they accumulate essentially no methylmercury, the neurotoxic compound that concentrates progressively up the marine food chain and reaches dangerous levels in large predatory fish. A 75-gram serving of sardines delivers approximately 2 to 2.5 grams of combined EPA and DHA, the two marine omega-3 fatty acids with the strongest clinical evidence for reducing neuroinflammation, lowering triglycerides, and improving insulin signaling in peripheral tissue. The same serving delivers over 100% of the daily vitamin B12 requirement for adults over 60. Critical because B12 absorption from food declines by an estimated 30% after 60 due to reduced gastric acid production, reducing intrinsic factor secretion. It delivers calcium comparable to a glass of milk, vitamin D, selenium, and complete protein, containing all 9 essential amino acids in bioavailable form. A 2022 study from the University of Barcelona tracking 204 adults over 65 found that those consuming sardines twice weekly for 1 year showed significant improvements in insulin resistance, HDL cholesterol, and adiponectin, an anti-inflammatory adipokine that protects vascular endothelium, compared to controls consuming equivalent protein from other sources. The second fish adults over 60 must eat is wild-caught salmon, with the wild-caught specification being non-negotiable for reasons that go beyond the omega-3 concentration difference. Wild Pacific salmon feed on krill and smaller fish in open ocean environments, producing flesh with EPA and DHA concentrations between 1.5 and 2.5 grams per 85-gram serving, alongside the carotenoid astaxanthin, the compound responsible for salmon's orange-pink color, at concentrations that farmed salmon cannot match from feed. Astaxanthin is a carotenoid antioxidant with a documented ability to cross the blood-brain barrier and the blood-retinal barrier that most antioxidants cannot penetrate. Research from Hokkaido University in Japan, tracking astaxanthin's neuroprotective effects over a 12-week supplementation trial in 96 adults over 65 with mild cognitive complaints, found statistically significant improvements in cognitive processing speed and working memory scores compared to placebo. For adults over 60 managing early cognitive decline, retinal health, or the cardiovascular inflammation that precedes atherosclerosis, wild salmon's astaxanthin content adds a protective layer that its farmed equivalent, whose color is produced by synthetic canthaxanthin added to feed, does not deliver at equivalent biological activity. The third fish adults over 60 must eat is mackerel, specifically Atlantic or Pacific mackerel, not king mackerel, which belongs on the avoid list for mercury reasons. And DHA sources per gram of any fish consumed in the American diet, with 2 to 3 grams of combined omega-3 per 85 gram, serving at a price point significantly lower than salmon. Its clinical relevance after 60 centers specifically on the skeletal muscle mechanism. EPA and DHA from mackerel activate mTORC, one signaling in muscle satellite cells, the stem cell population responsible for muscle fiber repair and hypertrophy following resistance exercise. After 60, muscle protein synthesis response to exercise and dietary protein declines significantly due to anabolic resistance, a blunting of the hormonal and cellular machinery that converts exercise stimulus into muscle fiber regeneration. Research from the University of Stirling in Scotland, tracking muscle protein synthesis in 20 adults over 65 following a resistance exercise bout, found that those supplemented with fish oil equivalent to mackerel's EPA and DHA content showed 35% greater muscle protein synthesis response compared to controls, a magnitude of effect comparable to adding a full resistance training session per week without changing the exercise protocol. The fourth fish adults over 60 must eat is herring, and its specific relevance after 60 centers on the coenzyme Q10 concentration it delivers alongside its omega-3 profile, a combination found at clinically relevant levels in very few food sources. CoQ10 is an essential component of the mitochondrial electron transport chain, the molecular machinery that generates ATP in every cell. After 60, cellular CoQ10 levels decline by an estimated 40 to 50%, reducing mitochondrial energy production efficiency in muscle, cardiac, and neurological tissue simultaneously. Statin medications, among the most commonly prescribed drugs in adults over 60, further deplete CoQ10 by blocking the mevalonate pathway that produces it as a byproduct. A person over 60 taking a statin for cardiovascular protection is pharmacologically depleting the compound. Their mitochondria need to generate the energy that protects the heart being treated. Herring provides omega-3 fatty acids, vitamin D, B12, selenium, and CoQ10 in a food package that costs under $3 per serving. The combination of mitochondrial support through CoQ10 and anti-inflammatory support through EPA and DHA makes herring specifically suited to the cardiovascular and neurological needs of adults on long-term statin therapy, a population that rarely receives dietary guidance specific to the nutritional depletions their medication produces. The fifth fish adults over 60 must eat is oysters, and the micronutrient case for oysters as the most concentrated food source of the minerals most deficient in the aging body is stronger than for any other single food. A serving of 6 medium oysters delivers approximately 52 milligrams of zinc, 5 times the daily recommended intake, alongside selenium, copper, iodine, and vitamin B12. Zinc's relevance after 60 was covered in our previous video on blood pressure medications and kidney function. It is a cofactor for over 300 enzymatic reactions in immune and neurological tissue. Intestinal zinc absorption declines by approximately 30% after 60, and diuretics and ACE inhibitors actively deplete it further through urinary excretion. Selenium is the mineral cofactor for glutathione peroxidase, the antioxidant enzyme that protects thyroid tissue, cardiac muscle, and brain cells from the oxidative damage that accumulates with age. A 2020 study from the Charité University Hospital in Berlin, tracking selenium status in 412 adults over 65, found that selenium deficiency was present in 43% of the cohort and was independently associated with reduced muscle strength, impaired immune response, and elevated cardiovascular disease markers. 6 oysters, twice weekly, fully corrects selenium deficiency in most adults over 60 at a total weekly food cost of under $8. The first fish adults over 60 should significantly limit is canned albacore tuna, the most widely consumed canned fish in the United States and the one carrying the most consequential gap between its nutritional marketing and its documented contamination profile. Albacore tuna is a large, long-lived predatory fish that accumulates methylmercury through biomagnification across its entire lifespan. The FDA's own methylmercury guidance places albacore tuna in its good choice category, defined as safe at 1 serving per week, a designation based on population-level averages that does not account for the age-related reduction in mercury clearance efficiency that occurs after 60. Methylmercury is cleared from the body primarily through hepatic glutathione conjugation and renal excretion. Both pathways operate at reduced efficiency in adults over 60. Hepatic. Phase 2 detoxification capacity declines with age, and kidney function declines at approximately 1% per year after 40, as we covered in our previous video. An adult over 60 eating albacore tuna 3 times per week, a common pattern among health-conscious adults following general eat more fish guidance, is accumulating methylmercury at a rate their clearance systems cannot match. Chronic low-level methylmercury accumulation produces cognitive processing slowing, fine motor impairment, and peripheral neuropathy symptoms that are clinically indistinguishable from normal aging, which is precisely what makes it so dangerous and so systematically under-recognized. The second fish adults over 60 should significantly limit is farmed tilapia, and the concern is not contamination, but fatty acid composition. Tilapia is one of the most widely farmed fish in the world, raised primarily in high-density aquaculture environments where feed composition is optimized for growth rate rather than nutritional output. The result is a fish with an omega-6 to omega-3 fatty acid ratio of approximately 11 to 1, compared to sardines' ratio of approximately 0.4 to 1. Omega-6 arachidonic acid, the dominant fatty acid in farmed tilapia, is the direct precursor to prostaglandin E2 and leukotriene B4, the two primary pro-inflammatory eicosanoids that drive the chronic systemic inflammation underlying insulin resistance, cardiovascular disease, and neurological decline. Consuming a fish marketed as a healthy protein source that delivers an 11 to 1 omega-6 to omega-3 ratio in a body already experiencing the chronic inflammation of aging is not a neutral dietary choice. A 2008 study published in the Journal of the American Dietetic Association specifically analyzed tilapia's fatty acid profile and concluded that for patients with cardiovascular disease, obesity, or chronic inflammatory conditions, farmed tilapia consumption could be more harmful than consuming bacon or hamburger from a fatty acid inflammatory balance standpoint. That paper received minimal mainstream coverage. Tilapia sales in the United States continued to grow. The third fish adults over 60 should significantly limit is swordfish, and the mechanism is the same as albacore tuna, but at a significantly higher magnitude. Swordfish is one of the largest, longest-lived predatory fish in commercial seafood markets, accumulating methylmercury across a lifespan that can exceed 15 years and a body mass that can exceed 400 kilograms. The FDA classifies swordfish in its choice to avoid category for pregnant women and young children, its highest contamination warning tier, but places it in the best choices, eat one serving per week category for the general population. The general population guidance does not differentiate by age, by kidney function status, or by the hepatic detoxification capacity decline that begins measurably after 60. Research from the University of Rochester Medical Center, tracking heavy metal accumulation in adults over 65 with varying seafood consumption patterns, found that swordfish consumers showed methylmercury blood levels 4 times higher than sardine consumers at equivalent weekly seafood portion sizes. For adults already managing cognitive concerns, peripheral neuropathy, or reduced kidney function, conditions that directly impair mercury clearance, swordfish is the highest single-serving methylmercury exposure available from any commonly sold American seafood product. The structural reason the 3 fish on the avoid list remain so heavily consumed by health-conscious adults over 60 is a marketing architecture that the seafood industry has spent decades constructing and defending. The phrase, "eat more fish," appearing in American Heart Association guidance, USDA dietary guidelines, and primary care patient education materials, applies valid population-level epidemiology to individual food choices, without the species-specific nuance that makes that epidemiology clinically relevant. The studies showing cardiovascular and cognitive benefit from seafood consumption were conducted predominantly in populations eating small fatty fish, the sardines, mackerel, and herring of Mediterranean and Japanese dietary patterns, not the large predatory fish that dominate American canned and restaurant seafood markets. The Tuna Foundation, the swordfish industry's primary marketing organization, and the aquaculture associations representing tilapia producers collectively spend over $40 million annually on consumer marketing and regulatory engagement in the United States. None of that investment goes toward communicating the omega-6 to omega-3 ratios of their products, the methylmercury accumulation profiles of their species, or the age-specific clearance limitations that change the risk calculus for adults over 60. The phrase, "good source of protein and omega-3s," is technically defensible for tuna. It omits everything the adult over 60 actually needs to know. The counterintuitive claim this video delivers is the one that most directly protects adults over 60 from the most consequential confusion in mainstream seafood guidance. The fish with the highest omega-3 content per dollar, the lowest methylmercury exposure, the most complete micronutrient profile for the aging body, and the strongest longitudinal evidence for cardiovascular and cognitive protection in adults over 65, sardines, is the fish most adults in this age group either avoid, eat rarely, or associate with low-quality convenience food. The fish most associated in popular culture with intelligence, heart health, and premium seafood consumption, fresh tuna, swordfish, are among the highest methylmercury sources in the American food supply. The correlation between what the seafood marketing industry has convinced health-conscious American adults to associate with quality and what the peer-reviewed literature identifies as optimal for the aging body runs almost perfectly in opposite directions. The most expensive, most prestigious, and most heavily marketed fish in the American market are the ones adults over 60 should eat least. The cheapest, least glamorous, and most overlooked fish are the ones the longest-lived populations on Earth have eaten most. 3 practical barriers prevent adults over 60 from implementing the must-eat list consistently, and each has a specific solution. The first is the flavor intensity of sardines, herring, and mackerel, which is significantly stronger than the mild whitefish profiles most American adults are accustomed to. The solution is not to overcome the flavor preference, but to work within it. Sardines packed in olive oil mashed onto a rye cracker with mustard and lemon, herring in a light cream sauce with sliced apple and onion as a Scandinavian-style preparation, mackerel fillets marinated in soy sauce, ginger, and sesame oil before grilling. The preparation methods that have made these fish daily staples in Japanese, Scandinavian, and Korean kitchens for generations, and that transform the flavor profile entirely from the canned product eaten plain. The second barrier is mercury confusion. Many adults who have heard that fish contains mercury now avoid all fish equally, losing the substantial benefits of the low mercury must-eat list. The clarifying principle is body size and lifespan. Small, short-lived fish that feed low on the food chain accumulate negligible mercury. Large, long-lived fish that eat other fish accumulate it across their entire lifespan. The third barrier is cost. Wild salmon and oysters carry price points that make weekly consumption a real budget constraint. The solution is that sardines and herring, the 2 fish with the strongest combined nutritional and safety profiles, cost between $1 and $2 per serving, making the complete must-eat protocol achievable at under $25 per week. The 25-year economic comparison between the 5 must-eat fish protocol and the pharmacological trajectory their documented effects help prevent follows the same arithmetic as every previous video in this series. The complete weekly seafood protocol, sardines twice weekly, wild salmon once, mackerel once, herring once, oysters twice, costs approximately $20 to $25 per week at current American supermarket and Asian grocery prices. Over 25 years, the total protocol cost is approximately $26,000. Compare that to the neurological and cardiovascular conditions the clinical literature associates with chronic omega-3 deficiency and methylmercury accumulation in adults over 60. The Alzheimer's Association estimates average lifetime care costs for Alzheimer's disease at $340,000. The American Heart Association documents average lifetime costs for managing established heart failure at approximately $109,000 over a decade of progression. Peripheral neuropathy management, whose symptoms are clinically indistinguishable from chronic low-level methylmercury toxicity, adds $8,000 to $20,000 annually in specialist and pain management costs. The seafood protocol that addresses all 3 risk pathways costs under $3 per day. There is no pharmaceutical product manufactured by any company that delivers EPA, DHA, astaxanthin, CoQ10, zinc, selenium, B12, and complete protein simultaneously at under $3 per serving. The financial incentive to sell those compounds separately, as individual supplements at individual price points, is not subtle. Right now, a 67-year-old man is standing in a grocery store reading the label on a can of albacore tuna. He has been eating tuna 5 days a week for 2 years since his cardiologist told him to eat more fish. His last cognitive screening showed subtle processing speed decline his doctor attributed to normal aging. He has occasional tingling in his feet his neurologist is monitoring. He has never had his blood mercury measured. He does not know that the can in his hand contains the most methylmercury of any fish commonly sold in American supermarkets. He does not know that sardines cost less, deliver more omega-3, and contain essentially none of the compound that has been accumulating in his neurological tissue with every serving he has eaten in good faith for the past 2 years. Press the like button right now. Without it, YouTube buries this video and he never finds it. With your like, This reaches 100,000 people. Every week, I release the research your doctor did not have time to cover at your last appointment. Subscribe so you receive it. Share this with the adult over 60 in your life who eats tuna regularly because their doctor told them to eat more fish and has never been told which fish. Which of these 8 fish surprised you most? On the must-eat list or the never-touch list? Tell me in the comments. And I deliberately left out the one preparation method that increases the omega-3 bioavailability of all 5 must-eat fish by up to 40%, a technique standard in Japanese coastal cooking for over 300 years. Tell me in the comments if you want that covered next. The visuals in this video are AI-generated animations used only to illustrate the content. They do not affect the accuracy of anything presented here in any way. Every study, every clinical finding, and every protocol detail was personally reviewed by me before it became content. This channel exists for one reason: to give you the knowledge to walk into your next appointment with the right questions, because a routine visit does not always have time to cover every risk your food choices carry. Dr. Jae Yoon. The Science Asia has always known. Take care of yourself. I mean that.